Hello, welcome back. Our first mini lesson on the accessory structures is going to be about hair, and you may have noticed I have less of my hair from my first chapters 1 and 4 lectures. I got my hair cut for the first time since April. It is now a week before term starts. So that was a long time. I had a lot of hair's dead anyways, but I had about that much of like really bad split ends. So a lot lighter, fluffier. So it's all good. It was nice to actually get my hair cut after it was April, May, June, July, August, 5 months. It was my quarantine hair. All right, so hair is a pretty cool accessory structure organ that we have associated with our bodies. It does a couple things. So depending on where it's located, we have hair on our head, which insulates our skull. It protects us from ultraviolet radiation. If we get hit on the head, it's a little bit of a padding, right? We have hair on our face. So eyebrows, eyelashes, nose hairs. All of these are helping to protect more delicate surfaces like your eyeball and your respiratory path. And then we just have hair all over. We're a mammal. So that's part of our characteristics of being that kind of organism as opposed to scales or, other kinds of like feathers. I'm trying to think of all the other coverings that animals have, exoskeletons like an insect, I guess. So we have little bit hairs all over, and depending on where in our body, they can have different characteristics. And we're going to talk all about that, as well as the actual anatomical microscopic structure of hair and how it stays so tightly in our skin. So this first slide is taking a look at the hair itself and the hair follicle, because those two things go hand in hand. We're going to talk about the hair first. The hair itself is a 3-layer thick structure. So I'm going to kind of try to, maybe I'll use a light green. So we have 3 layers of hair. I'm going to go right down here in this picture. You can't really see it. We can see it here in this micrograph right here. So kind of on the bottom pictures, it looks like we can see the 3 layers. So hair, 3 layers. The innermost layer is what we call the medulla, and medulla means core. We're going to use that word a lot in this class, so just get used to it. Medulla is the very middle. It is made up of a type of soft keratin, which gives hair kind of some flexibility, right? It's floppy. Then we have what's called the cortex. So that was our medulla, is the middle. The cortex is this thicker layer around the medulla, and this is made up of what we call hard keratin. It's still keratin protein, but it's got a little bit more maybe chemical bonds to make it a little bit stronger. That's what makes hair strong, is the hard keratin. Flexible is the soft keratin in the medulla. And then lastly, we have the cuticle. And you can see this is a really good picture, this electron micrograph. The cuticle is this kind of very thin overlapping scale, very much like our stratum corneum cells on the very surface. It's a very thin layer. I'll highlight these here, or maybe I'll just draw them in. So in this light micrograph up here, the dark brown, so that is your medulla. This thicker layer out here, this is going to be the cortex. And then the very thin line on the top, that's going to be your cuticle. So you can see the cuticle is very thin compared to the other 2 layers. And then in our, so that's the hair. The hair itself can be broken up into the shaft, which is this. This is what we see, the hair shaft. And it goes down to about maybe 1/3 of the way down into the follicle. So all of this up is called the shaft. All of this down is called the root. So if you're reading about the root and the shaft, it's like an arbitrary boundary. There's no physical change in the hair at that particular location, just from this, a little bit less than a half of the way down of the hair follicle. Anything above that's going to be the shaft. Anything below that's going to be the root. And at the very bottom, we have what's called the hair bulb, right? So the hair bulb down here. And then if we look, so here's the hair bulb again. This rounded part down here. At the very base of the hair, we have what's called the hair papilla. So I'm just going to kind of go like that. Your lab manual has a little bit bigger picture of this. And so we have blood supply. So we have some arterial flow going in, like a little capillary. We have some venous flow flowing out, right? So we have some gas exchange, nutrients, all those kinds of things. We also have some nerves. I'll put a little nerve in here, yellow. So the papilla is kind of like the life source of the hair itself. Just like the dermis, was a life source for the epidermis. The epidermis was the avascular, eventually dying because it's getting so far away from the blood supply, all those different strata like the stratum corneum. Your hair is kind of like the same thing. So the hair papilla is the source of blood supply and some of the innervation of the hair. And at the very tip of that, we have what's called the hair matrix. So that's going to be kind of hard to see. So I'm going to draw it like right here. The hair matrix are some cells, kind of like column-like cells. These are the cells that go through replication to make your hair. Very similar to the stratum basal going through mitosis to make more skin cells, the matrix cells repeatedly go through mitosis to make more hair. And so that's how your hair grows. So it grows from the very bottom of the bulb or the root and pushes new cells up and up and up and up. And the further away they get from that matrix and the papilla, they dehydrate, they die, and then all we're left with is the keratin and the collagen fibers that are part of your hair shaft. So probably by the time we're reaching like right around in here, it's dead already. There's no way you're going to get diffusion through that little plug of blood vessels there in the papilla. But the matrix cells are really close, so they can constantly go through mitosis and make more hair that's pushed up out of the follicle. All right, so that's our hair itself. The follicle is a connective tissue structure that anchors the hair into the skin. So it is also made up of a few things. So I'll pick a different color to highlight the follicle structures. So right outside of the cortex, or the cuticle, sorry, we have, where they're calling it, our internal root sheath. And then just outside of that is the external root sheath. So in this picture, it's kind of the peachy is your internal root sheath. The big thick purple is your external root sheath. And then we have what's called a glassy membrane and this big thick connective tissue sheath, which is like the anchor, which is it's mainly collagen fibers. So it's gonna blend in with the collagen fibers of your dense, irregular connective tissue. And it really anchors your hair into the skin. And then there's also some nerves wrapping around the outside of your hair as well. So when you get hair pulled on, or the wind's blowing it, or somebody pulls your hair, you feel it. It's painful because we have innervation at the root of the hair and we have innervation around the follicle. So even if you don't pull a hair out, you can feel it when your hair is being pulled in different directions. And that's the function of this root plexus, because the follicle's moving. It's going to be sending that information to your brain to process what's actually happening there. Okay. Structurally, a couple more things I wanted to point out. We'll do purple to kind of just separate it out from the follicle and the hair itself. We have this guy here, which is called the erector pili muscle. Anybody want to take a guess at what the erector pili muscle might do? As I talk to my computer and not an actual person. But you guys are out there. I know you are. We'll have this fun discussion in lab as well. The erector pili muscle is responsible for goosebumps. So when you are cold or nervous or scared or anxious, the erector pili muscle is smooth muscle, so it's involuntary. You cannot control it, but it contracts, and what it does is actually pushes a hair follicle up a little bit and pulls down on the surrounding softer, flexible skin. So instead of goosebumps, it's almost more like goose dents, because the erector pili muscle is pulling the skin down around it. So next time you get cold or you get goosebumps, look really closely at your arm hairs, and you should see a hair sticking out at the top of every one of those bumps, knowing that the skin around it is being pulled down by the erector pili. The next thing I wanted to point out is a sebaceous gland, which we'll talk more about in our gland mini lesson. This is the oil gland. The sebum goes and helps to condition and nourish the hair shaft. But we'll get to more of the details there in that mini lesson. Okay, and then growth and replacement of hair. So depending, it varies. There's an average, I think the book says you grow about 0.33 millimeters a day. So that's about 1 millimeter every 3 days. 1 millimeter is super tiny. It's like the littlest line on your metric ruler. So hair doesn't grow very fast. Some people grow faster than that. Some people grow slower than that. Your head hair grows for about 2 to 5 years before it falls out. And when it falls out, what happens is this matrix just kind of goes dormant. I was going to get some red here. Please don't make me do that all over again. All right, you saw me almost have a meltdown. My computer froze like right in the middle of finishing that slide. But it worked. I mean, I didn't have to re-talk that whole slide. So what I was saying, I can't go back and record over that slide, otherwise I'd have to do that whole slide again, which was like almost 8 minutes. So I will just talk about when your hair falls out after that 2 to 5 years. The matrix kind of goes dormant. The hair becomes what's called a club hair. It just falls out, and then the matrix becomes active again, and it starts growing hair out the follicle, so you get a new hair. Luckily, not all of our follicles are on the same cycle, because if they were, every 2 to 5 years, all of our hair would fall out and we'd just have to start again. So you have hairs in varying stages, each follicle in a varying stage of this hair cycle. So you could have one that's just getting ready to fall out, and another one that just had fallen out and starting over. So that's all I was going to say to finish up that slide. This last very interesting kind of peculiar collection of pictures is to talk about the different types of hair. This last little bit before we are done with the hair discussion is we have in the notes, we talked about 3 types of hairs. We have lanugo, vellus, and terminal hairs. So lanugo are the hairs that are your fetal hairs. You have hair growing all over your body as you develop in the womb, and then it starts to kind of shed towards closer to delivery, but babies can be born even with some lanugo hairs. And as a new parent, you may have seen some of those when the baby is newly born, and then they just kind of fall off in the first couple weeks or month after the baby's been born. The next type of hair is called a vellus hair. So this is our lanugo. Probably see the label right there. This is our vellus. It's maybe what we call like peach fuzz. So you find it a lot of times like for women on our face, on our arms, stomach, back, kind of those areas. And then this wonderful, I found a wonderful website of various men's facial hair. This is what we call terminal hair. So terminal hair are the dark pigmented, thicker hairs. For men, it's usually on their face. Armpit hairs, head hairs, usually leg hairs are all going to be these pubic hairs. These are all your terminal hairs, darker in color, thicker in texture, and those are our terminal hairs. We don't have one really converting into the other. They're just different types of hair. And then lastly, hair color. So the color of the hair is also based on melanocytes. In that matrix, so if I were to draw, or that hair papilla right here, and in the matrix where we had the cells, right? So these are all the cells that are growing to make more hair. I don't have brown option, but sandwiched between those are going to be your melanocytes. So they're going to be distributing melanin into the new cells that are being produced to go up into the cortex, the medulla, and that's where your pigment goes. So if you have dark hair, you're going to be secreting and producing dark melanin pigments to go into that. If you have red hair, blonde hair, whatever hair color you have, it's based just like your skin color on melanocytes that are associated in that hair matrix area. All right, that's our lecture on hair. I'm so glad I didn't have to do that whole slide again. Yay. Okay, I will see you next time. It looks like we're going to do glands next. Glands and then nails and then burns and skin cancer. That's my pattern. Okay, bye.